It is recording now.
Here we go.
Let's do this.
Let's do it.
Hello and welcome to FOV Ventures Viewpoints, a podcast series on a variety of topics across spatial computing, XR, AI, 3D software, and more. FOV Ventures is the go-to fund in Europe for ambitious founders building a startup for the metaverse. Today's topic is brands in the virtual world, part of our series on themes that relate to the FOV Ventures thesis. I'm David Repair, entrepreneur in residence at FOV Ventures, with experience in media technology for the past 20 years, including Netflix, Google, and recently running an AR startup. And today I have the pleasure of chatting with Charles Hambro, co-founder and CEO at GEEIQ. Charles, you and I met a few years ago at a retail tech accelerator in Paris, and we were on a panel together. I actually wish I had access to the panel today so I could compare the then and now. And I'm super interested in discussing how the metaverse has evolved since then. So without further ado, to start, would you mind introducing yourself and GEEIQ?
Absolutely. And by the way, David, that panel is actually available on YouTube. So I'll send it to you afterwards and you can have a laugh at how much I've aged, I suppose, since then. But pleasure to be here with FOV and with you. And my name's Charles Hambro, co-founder, CEO at GEEIQ. GEEIQ is an enterprise data platform, which we basically do market intelligence and business intelligence for brands who view gaming as a communication vertical. So like in many other verticals like TV, print and radio, you will need tools to do measurement and attribution and discovery. Social media, there'll be tools that does that. For virtual worlds, GEEIQ is the sort of answer to that problem where brands enter these spaces and they need to understand whether what they've done is successful, whether they've met their KPIs, and before even going in, having that sort of market intelligence to make the right decisions.
Awesome. And I mean, how's the company evolved since the foundation and over the past few years as the metaverse itself has morphed a bit?
Yeah. Goodness. So I suppose we're 5 years old, and we started in 2018, and back then it was started on the notion that people weren't just going into games to play, they were also going in to socialize. And therefore what that means is, does this mean that gaming environments are an evolution of social media? If yes, then clearly brands will want to follow where eyeballs move to. What do brands need in order to enter these any media vertical is data, essentially, to support them in their decision making and then support them in their reporting. So at the very start, we see the space in the same way. It is just quite clearly eyeballs moving from print TV and radio to social media, from social media to more virtual social media, which is essentially games. When we started the company, to build a data platform, it does take time. And a lot of the data that we have is publicly available, and we aggregate it together, have a layer of technology that pulls out the insights. But then what we really needed to get were these sort of private data partnerships to make sure we're going to a deeper level, and that takes time as well. So I suppose the landscape evolved in terms of no one was really educated back in 2018, including ourselves, in understanding the opportunity in its entirety. And then we started working with Gucci, who was our first customer, as their sort of gaming and metaverse consultants back then, before we even had the data platform ready and live. And we learned so much by working with them as our first customers, going into all of these different environments and understanding what all the pain points were and the data that was needed to get. And then, David, if you talk about how the metaverse has kind of changed and evolved, that word cropped up about 2 to 3 years after we had created GEEIQ, and really it was an affirmation of what our assumption was. I think it went in a direction where we were sat there a little confused because people were going into environments where there were no users, and actually I think the strategy for some of these brands radically changed from this is a marketing channel that's really valuable to reach people, to this is a piece of innovation where we can get great press and PR. So whilst more and more brands went in, they went in for what I would say a sort of a short-term reason instead of a long-term reason. And as this has evolved out of that press and PR being an opportunity, because let's face it, when you go into these virtual worlds now, no one really cares. What you're left with is what's the value. And that's going back to GEEIQ 2018 of, we think people are socializing in these games. There's a lot of people in these games. Let's show the value. So that's where we are right now.
That's super interesting. I mean, usually I love to start on actually defining what the metaverse is. And we didn't do that because I feel 2024, most people have now heard about it. But probably it's worth maybe getting your input on just that piece, right? Because we might think of it as Roblox, as a Fortnite, as a virtual world, but these are also games. We might think of Decentraland, which we don't hear about that much anymore. We might think of industrial enterprise applications. So in your eyes, what is the metaverse today in 2024?
Well, I think there's a technical definition from it that came out of Snow Crush, that book. And for me, what the metaverse is, it doesn't really exist yet. Okay. It's what Ready Player One is, I suppose, that sort of omni-channel world, that it's the 3D internet where you go in and you're represented by an avatar and you feel like you're there. I think the closest thing we have to the metaverse are user-generated content gaming platforms. What you just described as virtual worlds, I think, is the closest thing we have, but I don't think it's meeting the definition of what I think the metaverse is, which
because
is
it's not, because they're walled gardens and they're not connected to the other
one world where everyone goes in, you live, work, play, and buy, you know. But I think to some extent, some of these walled gardens has those kind of four elements to it.
But you can't yet retain your identity and the goods, the digital goods that you've purchased in Roblox, and port them over to Fortnite.
The interoperability happens within Roblox, but not outside Roblox. For example, it happens within Fortnite, but not outside Fortnite. And that's why games as platforms is a very interesting angle here. And that's why I would say those user-generated content gaming platforms are the closest thing we have to what one might define as the metaverse.
Awesome. So you mentioned some brands like Gucci, just, you know, I can see in the background there's a Gucci branded piece of gear, Xbox. Maybe side story on that, you can talk about, you know, how much that's worth and,
oh my goodness,
and how it came about on your desk.
Yeah. Okay, so, you know, being in the privileged position of having Gucci as a customer allows us to advise them on so many different projects. And this is just one of many projects which we work with them on. Without going too much into their own strategy, so speaking a bit more broadly, a lot of brands want to enter gaming environments to connect with new audiences that aren't spending time on traditional social media. And going into the environments alone is one way, but also connecting with the culture around those environments is very important. So gaming culture does not necessarily mean it's always digital. It can be physical. So I think the first partnership we orchestrated with Gucci was with Fnatic, the esports organization, where we created a sort of limited edition Gucci watch that was co-branded with the team. And then the second physical collaboration we did was with Microsoft, where we created an Xbox, which I think there were 100 available, and they all sold out before they hit the shelves, and they cost $10,000 on the shelf to purchase. So that was incredible. And then it turned up on the Jimmy Fallon show and kind of went everywhere, which was, I think people were so shocked by the price, but they sold out, which is kind of amazing. The second-hand market's really interesting because they're worth even more than they are in the first-hand market. How did I come across one? Well, we worked on the project, so we thought it would be a great idea to buy one ourselves, and luckily we were able to do that.
That's awesome. I hope you have good luck. So still very much in the physical collectible world, but how does that compare to the digital collectible world? I mean, are we seeing those types of collectibles going off the shelves? I know there have been in the past.
Yeah, so okay, so we can talk about two different things here. One is blockchain-based technologies, which I think the collectible market in that space is huge, obviously, and works on scarcity, and that's blockchain technology allows that. Also, some really interesting opportunities to generate revenue off the secondhand market. One of the data points we track in GEEQ is all of the brands that create NFT projects, and we look at
Are NFTs still a thing? Is that still a big market? Are brands still making loads of money from those marketplaces?
Sometimes. It's nowhere near as big as it was. I think crypto's recently come back. We haven't seen NFTs come back in the same way crypto has.
Right.
And a lot of that comes down to, hype versus actual utility and value. I don't know if there is going to be a future in NFTs or that space, but I think if there is a need and a real value beyond just hype and collectibles, then I think there is a future. Then we can talk about the other side, which is just digital collectibles, which you don't need the blockchain to do that. And I'm really proud to say that, GEEQ orchestrated Gucci Garden, if we're sticking with Gucci on all of this stuff, where, we brought back a feature, which was the limiteds feature inside Roblox, which allows you to have a limited, essentially works in the same way an NFT does, but inside the walled garden of Roblox. So there's a limited number of assets. You can purchase that asset. Scarcity is certainly linked to price. And that's when the Gucci handbag sold for more money inside Roblox than it does in real life. So that, I think it was like $4,200 for a Gucci handbag.
For a digital handbag.
Yes, but the difference is, and those assets are growing, and that's where NFTs in some cases aren't really working, but in the digital world, those digital assets are working. Why? Digital goods are only as valuable as the environments you can use them in. And because Roblox is an incredibly valuable environment to 300 million monthly active users, assets within those environments then inherently are also valuable. Having the Gucci Dionysus handbag in Roblox is a little bit like having a blue tick on Instagram. It's kind of that digital clout. But then also self-expression is very important. Everyone that has an avatar changes their clothing all the time. So having a Gucci handbag says...
That raises so many questions. I mean, one of them that the viewers might wonder about is the audience, right? I mean, Roblox, for a lot of our... the people that don't play with it, because we're, maybe I'm slightly older than most people who do. We see as a kids platform, lots of kids are watching videos about it, they're playing in it, etc. I mean, is that true, or is there a wider audience in Roblox? Why is Gucci targeting that audience? Who bought that $4,000 bag?
The users are anonymized, but one can look and see who owns it in Roblox. You can see what the user profile is. I think you get a lot of people that collect digital goods inside Roblox. It's probably a collector. I haven't even checked recently because you can buy the handbag and you can sell it on to someone else in Roblox. So it goes to multiple users sometimes. Going back to, is Roblox a kids platform? There are a predominant number of Gen Alpha and Gen Z in the platform, but the highest growth user base is between 24 and 30, I believe. So, and also, just to be clear, there's 300 million monthly active users. I can't go into private data on these experiences, but what we see at GEEQ is the experience you design attracts the audience that you want. So if you design an experience for an older audience, you can bet that an older audience is going to go into that experience. I can safely say that there are lots of 20 to 30-year-olds inside Roblox. And actually, they release public data where you can actually see the number in that cohort.
Okay. And when you say you design, so what does that mean? Is there different game mechanics, different like the fidelity of the visuals? Or?
I think it's multivariate. So game mechanic, yes. Player loop, yes. The fidelity and aesthetics of the experience makes a difference. But then beyond all of that, why does the experience exist? What is the utility behind the experience? How is the experience adding value to the community? And from what someone of the age of 12 years old will want to get from the platform Roblox will be a very different utility to what someone who is 20 years old will want to get from Roblox. Let's take a music artist, for example. If a music artist was to create an experience on Roblox, if that artist had a fan base that is an older fan base, then it's going to attract an older audience going to that music artist experience because that's what they're gifting. Now, if it's a music artist that has a very young fan base, the same thing applies. You won't get a lot of older people going there. You'll get a lot of younger people in there. I can safely say one of our customers is Elton John, and we created a Roblox experience. And wow. You can imagine, without going into details on private data, the majority of the user base was not super young. It was Elton John fans who were a bit older.
Maybe parents of the kids who play Roblox?
quite possibly.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that Roblox is for all ages. It is not just for children. It's a bit like kind of TikTok. Everyone thought it was just for kids, and then suddenly a bunch of other people go on it, and then for some reason everyone's saying it's like the millennial platform now.
Yeah, although I think a lot of the kids were annoyed that their parents would suddenly appear on there and try to, dance with them and whatnot. See that.
Which I forgot to mention, David, actually, is Roblox has gated experiences too. So there are 17+ experiences in Roblox. So you can. Cool. That's a publicly way of saying, look at the 17+ experiences in Roblox, and then look at the number of visits, and then you tell me if there's anyone that's 17+ that's in the platform, because they can be quite popular.
Awesome. So just to step back, because the title was brands in the virtual world. So brands plural, and then virtual world, we're talking a lot about Roblox, but yeah, following question would be, you mentioned Gucci. I've seen lots of brands pop up like Chipotle and retail brands that were using Roblox. So how have you seen the evolution of brand adoption over the past few years? Where are we now with brands' presence in virtual worlds?
Yeah, I will do one better and I'll show you. And for those listening, I'll try and talk through it as if this is
real. We love visuals at FOE.
So this is the GEEIQ platform, and one of the useful features is that we track every single branded activation that happens across all virtual worlds. So to your first question, what virtual worlds other than Roblox? You have Zepeto, Fortnite, The Sandbox, Animal Crossing, Minecraft, Decentraland, VR Chat, Rec Room, Meta Horizon, Super QQ, which is in China, Timeland, which is in Southeast Asia, Spatial.io. So there is a bunch of user-generated content platforms. I think the example, David, is in social media, you don't just have Instagram, you also have Facebook, you also have Twitter, you also have TikTok, you also have Snapchat. In the virtual world space, you don't just have Roblox, you also have Fortnite. And these platforms will also vary in terms of demographics as well. And
just for our viewers, because it's quite small, the font. So what is the big dark chart and the purple one?
I'm going to try and make it big for you. But essentially here, the dark, so this is the number of brands entering these virtual worlds, number of new brands, not accumulative. And the dark one is Roblox, and the light blue one is Fortnite. So you can actually see that Roblox is dominating in terms of the percentage of brands entering these virtual worlds, but Fortnite is starting to grow. That pink one is the Sandbox. So you can see how much press the Sandbox got over the lockdown period. And I think that's obsessed. That's beyond XR.
Okay.
I think.
And you have lots of interesting data on there. So in terms of Roblox and Fortnite, it looks like end of 2023, you still had 100+ activations by brands?
Yeah. So in Q4 of 2023, there were just under 250 new brands entering these environments.
Okay.
When did this start for our listeners here? It started in Q2 of 2018. That's kind of the birth of GEEIQ, with activations inside Beyond XR, Obsess, and Fortnite. But the growth has been dramatic. Funny to mention, actually, Q1 has seen the first dip of 2024 of new brands entering the space. I think that's a sort of sign of market maturity, and Q4 is always a big year for brands when they want to enter these spaces. Now, we can chop this down and break it up in loads of different ways. If we look at that same graph and we break it up into industries, because you said we just spoke about Gucci with fashion, why don't food and drink? Actually, fashion is the one in red here, and that's had a very consistent, roughly 16 to 20 brands, fashion brands entering the space every quarter. But there's a growth one here, which is media and entertainment, which is now dominating.
And that's movie, TV shows, and music?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Music, movies, TV shows, so Netflix and things like that. And then personal care and cosmetics is something that's been quite consistently big and growing.
And what does that mean for our listeners, viewers? Is that they're building their own gated environments within these virtual worlds, or they're providing digital merchandising, or what's their activation?
So this isn't even discussing digital goods. This is just virtual worlds, building virtual environments within these virtual worlds that I was talking about there. So particularly with regards to film, what we're seeing is these virtual worlds and these environments they're building are holding users for longer than traditional social media campaigns. So where you might scroll through Instagram and see a film advert for roughly 3 to 5 seconds, instead of that, you go into a Roblox experience for Kung Fu Panda, or there was another one recently, which was Godzilla versus Kong, and you'll be spending half an hour in there.
Wow. Okay.
So if you're, I don't know, Warner Brothers or Paramount Pictures, you're going, right, if we're trying to capture attention here, it sounds like that we're getting more attention inside these virtual worlds than we are inside social media right now. And we're spending a lot on social media, and we're not spending very much on virtual worlds.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. I guess back in the days when I had the Game Boy, that's how old I am, we'd used to have, IP games released, all consoles, games released from Hollywood for strong IP. I mean, now it sounds like it's more agile. They just create a small world that's gamified into a platform that exists like Roblox, right?
Yeah, I think brands have been going into games for decades, since games existed, but it was a very different type of deal. It's sort of, and it still happens today. They're kind of licensing deals and kind of product placement. When you go into Gran Turismo, you want it to be the Aston Martin car. The difference is with these user-generated content platforms, these virtual worlds, they're not treating them as license deals. They're treating them as marketing distribution channels, in the same way they're treating their Instagram profile as a marketing distribution channel, where they can acquire users consistently.
Okay. And just, I have to ask, do you feel that the current economic situation has impacted, you're showing growth, so it sounds like not, but do you feel it's impacted the demand for investment and innovation in general into virtual worlds?
So it's a great question. I think if we rewind and go with the evolution of brands entering this space, it really sat with the innovation teams. And certainly I think the current economic uncertainty has affected the innovation departments and their budgets to go into these worlds. But to be honest, about a year ago, when you started seeing, NFTs start to come down and the hype start to go and a brand goes in and no one talks about it in press, this responsibility moved onto the marketing teams. So actually, we're not seeing a slowdown with regards to the marketing teams because their KPIs are very different. And actually, they've got to think about, if I do an Instagram campaign, what am I going to get back from it? And how am I going to get the most engagement for my buck? And if I do a virtual world, what am I going to get back from it? How am I going to get the most engagement for my buck? And luckily for the industry that I'm in, they're getting more engagement for their buck inside the virtual worlds than they are on traditional social media.
Yeah. Okay. So very much marketing focused, because We used to
Not
look at
innovation.
Yeah.
That's taken a hit for sure. Marketing, different, because they're KPIs.
Okay. What about I'm not sales, but I used to see some departments in charge of immersive that were part of new business units because they were exploring how to monetize and maybe generate some revenue. And we used to have charts showing Nike's #1, and I don't know if it was Gucci or Dolce & Gabbana or other brands. How much are they generating? Some were doing 24 million from virtual world. So is that still going on, or it's really not the expectation? It's really just marketing.
I think that is still going on, but the opportunities to generate that sort of direct revenue, particularly that was done on the NFT market, to be clear, which skewed everything else out, is few and far between to find those sorts of opportunities. Quite difficult to do that. Still possible though, and there are still examples of brands doing quite well in that space, but it's much harder. What is much getting easier and much clearer is the top of funnel engagement metrics, of course, inside these virtual worlds. And now, as these virtual worlds are evolving, they are implementing technologies to provide more bottom of the funnel solutions on conversion. Businesses like Flaunt, who allow you to add email signups within Roblox experiences so that you can acquire emails for your CRM. Brands internally put dollar signs on number of emails they can acquire, and these platforms are now allowing that to happen. So direct revenue of digital goods, yes, but not going to move the needle. I think everyone's waiting for that moment when you can sell physical product inside these virtual worlds, which I'm sure will happen at some point.
Okay, cool. And last question before I switch gears to product, which I'm super excited about, and technology. For those that are in marketing actually listening, we've talked again a lot about Roblox. You did mention that there's Fortnite and Zepeto and other platforms. So what are the key differences between those platforms? I mean, are brands using them differently? Are there different functionalities, different audiences? Like what are your thoughts around that?
So let's take the first bit, which is demographics. They all skew differently in terms of demographics, in the same way that X or Twitter and Instagram will skew slightly differently in terms of the demographics that use those platforms. The second one is what you are able to do. So in Roblox, I would say you're able to do the most amount of things. And it's the furthest along in terms of optionality. You can do immersive advertising. You can build your own experience. You can work with a very, very thriving competitive developer ecosystem to build those experiences, which drives the price of activation down as well. You can do items. You can sell items on the marketplace. Whereas the difference with Fortnite is actually the fidelity is a lot higher, but you're very limited in what you can do. You can't sell items. They've only just brought in the opportunity to save in your experience. There are certain game mechanics that you can't implement, and then the difference is Zepeto is, you can't sell items unless you're speaking to Zepeto directly. In VR chat, you're limited to just VR. You can't go in the PC. So they all have their limitations. I would say Roblox is the furthest along with the most optionality.
Mm-hmm. And Fortnite fidelity because Epic and Unreal Engine 5.
The Unreal Engine is a fantastic engine, which is used by Hollywood to make films. So that's a brilliant situation. But
we saw the announcement recently of Disney wanting to sort of recreate, I guess, a Disneyland in Fortnite with all the different themes, Star Wars.
The same way that Lego invested a couple of years ago, and now you see Lego Fortnite in there. Disney have done the same thing.
Okay. Well, switch gear. We already have time. I can't believe it. So around product technology, I mean, you did mention the developer ecosystem. That's super interesting. All of these virtual worlds or companies, if I'm correct, just started by building their own, high control over the experience, and getting people to go in with quite limited experiences. And now it sounds like Roblox has a marketplace, and people or creators can come in and create their own content and monetize it and get royalties, right? It reminds me of my YouTube days when...
But that is it. It is the YouTube model. It's UGC.
So yeah, can you talk about that a little bit more? What's the approach there for Roblox?
What do you mean? Like, what do I think about the user-generated content
I guess
model?
the two questions is more interested around the strategy of Roblox, like why are they doing that?
Yeah.
And then maybe just how does it work? Like how does one go and create a world?
Yeah. So really interesting. You know, Roblox is quite an old company, and it's been going for 15 years now. So they've really been thinking about this for a long time. But I think when you're it's not, just to be absolutely clear, it's not a game. It's a platform for people to make games. In the same way that Instagram doesn't post pictures, it's a platform that allows other people to post pictures.
Yeah.
The only difference between Instagram and Roblox is in Instagram, the content is 2D, limited to video, image, and word. And in Roblox, the content is 3D. Now, the business model is a bit like YouTube, where if you get a certain number of views on your video, YouTube will pay you for that engagement, for those views. Now, this is going to get a bit confusing because Roblox have recently entered the advertising game, where you are now getting a share of the advertising revenue that maybe if an advert sits in your experience, you'll get paid out on it. But the initial business model and the core business model of Roblox at the moment is digital goods and digital currency. So Roblox has created this platform. In this platform, users can build anything they want, but also users can monetize what they build by either selling a digital good or, in their experience, in games, you know, you have power-ups and you can buy assets in the game and subscriptions and things like that, because it's you buy it with Robux, and Robux is the economy inside Roblox. And to buy a Robux, you need to spend real money with Roblox to get the Robux. I believe 450 Roblox equals roughly $5.
Okay. And actually,
handbag was sold for $4,500, or roughly $4,500. It was actually sold for something like 100,000 Robux, which equates to $4,500 US, and you can exchange those 100,000 Robux for real money.
Yeah,
and that's how the system works.
Is in terms of YouTube, you know, when I was head of studios there, I mean, we would encourage a lot of brands and corporates to create original content because we want the highest quality content on there. Of course, UGC was what made YouTube popular, but it was harder to monetize. I mean, is that the same reason or strategy behind for Roblox? Is that maybe there are a lot of brand activations, as we discussed in the first half, but maybe not enough, and they just want more content, more diversity? I mean, is that the reason?
Well, there are, I think, hundreds of millions of experiences on Roblox. There are hundreds of millions of experiences.
Really? That's mind-blowing.
There's roughly 400 brand experiences on there. Yeah. So in terms of number of experiences, you've got to be really I don't know how many experiences there are on Roblox, but it feels like there are lots, essentially. A bit like how there are billions of videos on YouTube. In terms of the ratio between a non-branded experience and a branded one, it's huge. I mean, there are very few branded experiences in the space right now. I'm trying to think of what your initial question was.
Because the strategy of opening up to developers and then having a marketplace of world creation, I guess, and content creation is to increase the amount of games and experiences for the audience.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's basically the YouTube strategy where your users create the content, as opposed to the Netflix strategy where you're commissioning content. Yeah. I would back YouTube any day over any other streaming platform, because I think when you have your users creating content, that's free, and you are monetizing that content that they are creating.
Right.
YouTube's great.
And does anyone can create on Roblox?
Anyone can create on Roblox.
Okay. Very interesting. Cool. And in terms of technology, so they're making changes like this one, but in terms of maybe stepping back from Roblox and just talking in general about virtual
Yeah.
world, how do you see emerging technologies? I mean, AI is one that comes to mind, of course, immediately. In FOV Venture, we look a lot at how AI, Gen AI, gets applied to spatial computing and metaverse type technologies. Maybe it helps create worlds easier, 3D assets, maybe makes the NPCs more intelligent. So, have more emotions. How do you see, for example, AI having an impact on virtual worlds?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm always thinking about it from a customer and brand perspective. And quite simply, when Adobe brought out Photoshop, it empowered so many creators and illustrators to do work faster for less. And I see AI as a accelerant to empower developers to build more faster for less, which is good for GEEIQ because it hopefully will eventually reduce the barrier to entry for brands to create their own virtual worlds. Because it's very easy to create an Instagram profile. It's not as easy to create a Roblox experience. It takes time and talent, resource, money. One would hope that AI reduces that barrier to entry. We are not seeing that reduction in barrier to entry yet. So either the developers are making a better margin, or it's just not, the tech isn't there.
Maybe there's a possibility that brands will be able to integrate more of the creation thanks to AI, if they can help with coding and asset creation and whatnot.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. And like every genie in the bottle, there's some good points and there's some bad points. The ability for everyone to create unofficial content and things like that suddenly maximizes, and you've got a whole nother problem on your hands. But certainly I think it's empowering creativity, and this could go in another way where you might not actually see a drop in barrier to entry, but you might actually see a massive increase in quality of experience as well.
Okay. And do you have any other examples of how AI can be used beyond the ones I mentioned? I mean, around the NPC or the asset creation. I mean, certainly for ideation and mood boards and things like that. When you're
I mean, at GEEIQ internally, it's in everyday processes for us. Okay. Our developers are using it to help them code. Creatives are using it to come up with copy. You know this, David, it's sort of everywhere. Mm-hmm. The trick is how well are you using it, and how efficiently, how much does it help?
Okay. So if I bucket it, it sounds like there's a productivity angle where it's making your organization leaner, efficient, faster to market. There's the creativity angle where around ideation and content creation, asset creation, etc., is also easier. Maybe more creativity assisting humans?
In the same way that Photoshop allowed an illustrator to be more creative, then yes.
Yeah. And then is there an audience bucket where, because you're doing so much intelligence, where AI is going to make ad creation, distribution streamlined?
Yeah. Pulling out insights on data sets that an analyst might miss or might not be able to see. Again, AI is a tool for a data analyst it's the Photoshop to the illustrator to pull out more insights.
Okay, fascinating. And maybe to talk about another side of technology, which is more the distribution aspect of where you consume that content. We haven't really talked about that. I mean, people are assuming that kids are using their mobile phone or a tablet or maybe a computer to go to Roblox. I mean, where are you seeing that happening? What about VR headsets, AR glasses, mixed reality headsets?
Yeah, so I think it's with all of this stuff on the hardware, it's always convenience trumps quality. Mm-hmm. So a huge portion of users are all on mobile, essentially. In Roblox and in Fortnite, when Fortnite was available on the App Store in mobile, because it's convenient and everyone has one. And actually, remember what I said at the start, the main reason people are going into these environments are not just to play, it's actually to socialize. So
Right.
you kind of care less about the fidelity and care more about, I want to be where my friends are, and fine if that's on a mobile. I think that if we're talking about VR and things like that, I think it's incredible, but still incredibly niche. And we've got an Apple Vision Pro in the office, and Gucci have recently come out with an Apple Vision Pro experience, which is what we would call immersive storytelling, which is incredible. If you have one, I would recommend you download the Gucci app and try it out. It really is amazing. But until this is convenient as a mobile, then we're not going to see it hit the mass market anytime soon.
And convenience in terms of price, of weight, and all of it. Yeah.
Okay. As convenient as me picking up my phone and looking at my phone. What's more convenient is that being in normal frame glasses where I don't have to pick up my phone. Absolutely, that is going to completely blow mobile phones out of the water.
Okay, so you're talking about AR, mixed reality glasses coming to market.
Yeah, and I see huge future and potential in that. The problem is convenience is the thing that wins, not necessarily the tech.
Yeah, of course.
But I can see a road where that tech becomes more convenient than having a metal slab in your hand.
Yeah. Great. This was super awesome. I guess getting to the end of our podcast or our panel, what advice would you have for any businesses, entrepreneurs, founders, startups getting into the immersive space or looking at the virtual world space from your experience?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think specific to virtual world space, I tell you what, I'll go general and then I'll try and get specific. General advice for all founders, and I'm sure you all know this, David, is it's a marathon, not a race. Mm-hmm. And just absolutely, when the lows are low, don't worry, because stuff happens and it will come back up. And when the highs are high, watch out, because there's a bus around the corner, and just be careful. So just being very consistent emotionally with regards to founding a company is very important. That would be my advice, and not being too high or too low. And then particularly for virtual environments, I would, and sort of the metaverse space, is I would be, and this is going to sound incredibly biased, I would make sure that everything you're doing is not on hype, and just really look at the data behind the stuff, look at the core principles. And that's why I'm very proud of GEEIQ, because we started in 2018. We had a core notion and a core thesis, and our industry went through a massive hype cycle, and we stayed very true to our thesis throughout it, and we're out the other side of it even stronger.
Yeah, super interesting. Totally agree with you, and definitely your role and your company is very important in rationalizing this, showing the real number, showing the KPIs, and that there are brands actually getting return through marketing and other types of activities.
Well, if you remember, there was a sort of metaverse winter or whatever it was, or if you actually look at the screenshot that I was sharing with you today, you don't see that. You see a constant increase of new. So really making sure you differ between hype is great and fun and important, but you differ hype and reality in a clear way.
And maybe to go a bit macro for the end, at FOV Ventures, when we look at metaverse and maybe general spatial computing, yes, we think about virtual world, we think about consumer applications, but we also see that there are other types of applications across the world in different verticals, in the industrial and enterprise sector as well, right? I mean, people are using headsets in surgeries to have more precise surgery, applying MRI or X-ray overlays. People are using it in supply chain manufacturing with digital twins. So there are real world applications where it's truly tremendously useful to companies.
I think that's a great point, David. And everything I've said about VR and AR headsets and all of that stuff, I want to be clear, I'm applying that to the business to consumer market, not necessarily the enterprise B2B market, because the convenience point that I was saying doesn't apply as much.
Yeah.
That's actually more of a quality point.
No. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah,
I think we're on the same page here. And maybe the other point is the convergence of a lot of the emerging technologies. So spatial computing / metaverse converging with artificial intelligence and, real-time connectivity through 5G, then 6G is coming along quite quickly. So there are a lot of, IoTs that are bringing real-time data. All of that is sort of converging into what we call the spatial computing era, right?
Exactly. It's such an exciting time right now. And I'm so lucky to be a small part of it.
A large part of it and a large part of the portfolio at FOV Ventures. So I think we're going to end on this super positive notes. This was really fascinating. Thanks so much, Charles, for the time. And hope to see you in the real world or the virtual one.
We must meet up, David. It's been far too long, but yes, thank you so much for having me.
I'll expect that Gucci Xbox next time we meet.
Yes, yeah. No, you gotta try. We've never actually played it, but maybe we can give it a go.
All right. Thanks, Charles.
Thanks a lot, David.
Bye.